This presentation is being recorded by Missoula Community Access Television as part of a media assistance grant donated to the library by MCAT. Hi, welcome everybody. I'm Kelly Moore with the Missoula County Extension Office. I am the Family and Consumer Science person in our office, and I'm happy to be with you again today. Lots of people talk about canning. We normally do that in the summer, but there are many times during the year when we can can. So you may think that it's only for the summer or fall, but it's very easy to feel overwhelmed because everything comes on at one time. So it's really easy to preserve everything at one time. So if you wait a few months, as I have, then you feel like canning again. And today we're going to do some red pepper jelly. So that's a good Christmas item. It makes for a great gift. It's homemade, it's relatively inexpensive, and something that you do yourself. And also it's pretty delicious to eat too, okay? So, if you want to make your gifts for holidays, now's a good time to do it. Pretty much if you take a day and set that aside, you can make a lot of red pepper jelly for yourself and for your friends, okay? Now, some people are probably saying, wow, peppers and jelly, how does that go together? We're used to eating jelly that's made of fruit. This is probably not a jelly you might put in a peanut butter sandwich. I don't know. I've never tried that. That might be kind of tasty. But actually, it's a colorful way to add something sweet to your holiday table or as appetizers for any holiday parties. Okay? And it doesn't really take very long to make. Yeah, we probably maybe tasted a version of this that's available commercially, but those versions to me tend to be very sweet. So if you want to be able to change that up a little bit, this is a really good recipe for you to use. There are lots of recipes out there, but today I'm using a recipe from the book called Foolproof Preserving. And that's right over here. This book is from America's Test Kitchen. We usually try to promote recipes that are tested and research-based. So that's what we talk about, extension site recipes. And there are many of those on that you can get for red pepper jelly. I like this recipe because all the steps make perfect sense. They're all tested and researched, so that's why I promote that one. As always, I just wanted to show you a few more things that are available for you if you want to make a different recipe. The National Center for Home Food Preservation is a good place to go. And New Mexico State University has a lot of recipes on green chili, so that's also a really interesting website to find recipes. Okay? And as always, extension sites, Penn State, for example, will give you an entire rundown of peppers and why we do what we do to them and the different varieties. So if you want to do a little more research, that's a good site to go to. Okay. So always in canning, we're going to need a little bit of equipment, okay? I have some things setting out and we'll go through each step. The most important thing to start with are canning jars. And this year I know they've been a little more difficult to find, especially during canning season. We were a little low on those. It's important to use jars that are specifically for canning if you're going to actually hot water bath can them. You can make this jelly and just stick it in the refrigerator and use it up within a few weeks. So that's certainly okay. You don't have to process it. Okay? Typically, too, when you want to give gifts of jelly or jam, you might want to choose a little bit different kind of jar than you would for other things. You certainly wouldn't can vegetables in this size jar or most fruits. So these are kind of cute for jams and jellies, and they make great gifts to put in baskets. Okay? You'll also want to make sure that you use, if you are processing them, to use the correct lid, okay, for the size jar you have. And also, you want to make sure that typically the jars are the same size when you are processing. This jar is a little bit larger than these jars, so you want to look at the processing time. That's really important, okay? And processing time is based on our elevation. So in Missoula County, it's 32. So that means, and I know all of these because I have a handy little canning conversion thing here. So if you would like to have a copy of that, please let me know. So it says if we're using a boiling water canner, from 3,000 to 6,000 feet, 10 minutes of processing time. So that's what we will do, okay? All right. Also, it's pretty nice in this recipe to have a food processor. Okay? They come in handy for so many things. If you don't have one, that's okay. You could just do a lot more chopping. But today we're going to use this because we have it, okay? So this recipe calls for red peppers. There's also a recipe for golden pepper jelly, which is usually the yellow one here. Peppers obviously come in lots of different sizes. So this recipe calls for medium red peppers, and you want to make sure you use kind of the right amount for the recipe. Okay, so between these two red peppers, I would probably consider this more a medium and this a large, okay? So when we get to the recipe, I'll tell you how many cups of those we need. Also, this recipe calls for something called a habanero pepper. So it's kind of a little basket shape pepper. These are known to be pretty hot. And of course, it's the membrane inside the pepper and the seeds that really, that's the whole heat in this pepper. So if you want your jelly to be pretty spicy, you want to leave that membrane in there. They're very, very tiny little seeds, okay? I wouldn't say that for these peppers. We're going to clean out all the seed in these because they are much bigger and don't make for a very good product if you leave those in there, okay? So our recipe is going to call for chopping up some red peppers, right? Again, the recipe we're using is in the Foolproof Preserving book, and that will give you all the specifics of what you need. So we're going to start out with a pound of red bell peppers. And I've pretty much decided that I've looked that up, and it takes about 4 to 5 medium-sized peppers, okay? So I'll just show you how we're going to chop this up. You can certainly add a little bit of the golden pepper if you want, but if you want to get that nice red color, we're just going to stick with these. All right. I am going to use a food processor, but I'm going to kind of clean these up and chop them, rough chop, and then stick them in the food processor so they'll all process evenly. I'm going to put my gloves on. When you are using the hotter peppers, it's really good to put your gloves on, even if you think it's not hot. I can remember cutting a lot of, I believe it was a few jalapenos, some Anaheim peppers. I was in a hurry. I didn't put my gloves on. And I thought, oh, this is okay. They're not that hot. Nothing's happening. And it was like an hour later, the nail beds on my hands were so sore, I could hardly use them. And it stayed that way throughout the day, okay? So I've got my red pepper. First thing I'm going to do is rinse it off, okay? It's good to have things washed, all vegetables. We're not going to wash them with soap. We're just going to wash them with water, okay? These days, you often hear about recalls. I think romaine lettuce is the latest. So it's really important to always wash your vegetables when you get them. Even if it says washed, I still do it myself just to make sure. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna get to the plug-in over here. Okay. These food processors have gone down a lot in price. So, and this is kind of one of the more smaller versions. So they're really a good investment. Okay. All right, that's out of the way. Okay, so I'm going to cut this stem too, but I'm just going to cut around the back side of the pepper. Oops. And then just kind of pull it apart. So this side's pretty much ready for chopping. Right here, the seeds, I'm going to just kind of pop that out. So I don't want to waste much of the pepper. These peppers are hothouse peppers. So if you do make this in the summer, you get a little better tasting red pepper. But these are available all year. They get to be a little pricey, so kind of be watching for a sale. All right. Some of the larger stores have them in a big bag, so that's the time when you can grab them. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to kind of put these in sections. All right. And take off a little more seed here. You might need to do that. See, sometimes you'll have seed floating in there, and that's not very good for when you're putting your jam on crackers or whatever. Okay, so like I say, I'm just going to cut these in pieces. Okay, and I'll show you with this size pepper, which was the larger one, how much pepper we end up with. Okay. There we go. All right. So there we go. This is how much pepper one large pepper would be. So actually that's probably a little over a cup, okay? So we're going to throw that in. We're going to do the same for this other pepper. Okay. Also, we're going to wash that up quickly. Put that back. And I'll do the same here. All right. Some people actually like to save these seeds and try to replant them. So, I don't know. Sometimes they have limited success with that, but it's worth a try. Okay. All right, kind of rough chop those as well. All right, so obviously this is quite a bit less pepper. Might be pretty close to a cup. That was more the medium size, okay? So our recipe calls for, again, it calls for a pound. So I think that was the 5 peppers that I did the medium for the recipe. Okay. So we're just gonna put this on here. And all of the food processors kind of start up differently. Let's see. Everything has to be aligned. I know that before you can use these. There we go. Okay. I use this pulse button a lot because that gives you a lot more control. So I'm just going to hit it like that. And it kind of makes it even chopping all the way around. Because we don't want this to be like red pepper paste. We want there still to be pieces. All right. And we're going to kind of scrape that down and make sure everything is all put in place. So that's what you just do for all your peppers. Wow, if you could smell that, that's pretty peppery right there. We're going to just give a few more pulses here. Okay. Let's get these little pieces down here too. Okay. And too, you'll really discover, probably you already knew this, but peppers are made a lot of water. So you're going to have quite a bit of liquid there. All right. Oops. There we go. So yeah, if you could just look at this, you can kind of see the liquid in the bottom and see the consistency that you need in here. All right. Now, while we have these in here, we're just going to add some of our habaneros as well. Okay. All right. I have 3 of these, but I'm going to only add 2 right now because we have a small amount of pepper. I'm going to wash these as well. These are especially important to wear your gloves with. All right. Okay, so if you can see the inside of these, of course, those are much smaller seeds. So I typically just take the stems off. I don't want to take out the membrane and seeds of these because I like it a little hotter. But if you don't want it as hot, you can certainly clean those out. All right, I'm going to just put these in halves here, quarters. Throw those in, and one more. All right. All right. These are nice to use these peppers because that color blends in nicely with the red. If you use a jalapeno or some of those, the green, it's going to change the color up a little bit. So if you are using these for gifts, you want to kind of make the color as consistent and as appealing as possible. This is a brand new processor, so sometimes they just don't want to go on. The lid doesn't want to go on so easily. Okay, that's still, again, you got to get it right on or it will not run. There we go. Okay. Okay, now we got that all put in there as well. If you were to stick your nose down in here, probably, yes, it's a little much more hot. You can just feel that. It kind of goes in your nose, okay? So again, you see there's a little bit of water in there, okay? Let me move this out of the way because we're done with our processor. So then our next step, it's really important to have a pretty heavy-duty stock pot to cook this in. So, and you want to make sure that the pot's a little bit larger because it will, when it boils, it starts to, of course, as anything will, rise up in the pan, okay? So you don't want it to overflow. So we're going to just take the blade out here. Careful that we don't lose any of it. And then, of course, we would need a few more peppers. If we were doing this for real, we'd need probably another, I'd say 4 more peppers, 3 to 4 more peppers, depending on the size. Okay. I'm going to try to scrape all of that out of there. Of course, if you do grow green peppers, they become red after they've been out in the sun and have long enough to process. So growing peppers is an art for sure. It takes a lot of patience and a lot of heat. Okay, so now the important part of making jelly or jam, we do need something to make that gel form. Okay, I'm going to take my gloves off now. All right. Okay, and all of our canning supplies are here. We'll go over and take a look at those. So there are a couple of things we need. For one, we need some sugar. Okay, sugar helps with the gel, helps to form the gel. If you really do not want a lot of sugar in your recipe, then, and this recipe, by the way, is for low sugar. So then you get the Sure Gel, and it says on the box, I just say a pink box is what you need for little or very little sugar, okay, in a recipe. You can substitute sometimes honey, if it's a milder flavor honey, or like a corn syrup, but you want to make sure that the recipe, you know, kind of tells you how much to use, okay? This is a regular original Sure Gel, so this is, you will add a lot more sugar to this one, okay? You can tell too because this box is pretty lightweight compared to this one. And then there's a liquid pectin. So these you mix with sugar in the beginning before you put it into the recipe. The liquid Certo, which here's what the package looks like. You get 2 packages in a box, okay? And 2, there are directions in each one of these. Very important to read the directions because as many times as I've made things, I don't guess anymore. Gives you lots of recipes, tells you the exact amount. That way you'll make sure it's foolproof. And you put a lot of time and effort into all these, so you want them to turn out. Fruit is expensive if you're buying it, so you don't want to waste your time or money for sure. This one goes right into the boiling recipe, okay? The boiling fruit or vegetable in our case, right? So just follow the directions for that. They both give you very good results, so it just depends on what you prefer to use. Like I said, today we're going to use the pink box because that's what the recipe calls for. Also, there are different ways to extract the juice. This is called a jelly strainer, and this is kind of what it looks like on this little stand. I mean, kind of fancy little thing. And you can use the jelly bag. So obviously it keeps a lot of seeds going through. This is good to use for raspberry jams. You can get one of these at Ace Hardware. So that's another good thing if you're going to make a lot of jelly and jam. Also, we, to our jam or jelly, we're going to add some acid. So that could be lemon juice. But in this case, it's going to be white vinegar, white distilled vinegar. Can't use apple cider vinegar because obviously the taste would kind of go through. So a little bit of vinegar in there is what we're going to do as well. Okay, so I'll show you when we take the low sugar gel. And again, this has the recipe in here. So just say, by the end of the season, when I've used these, they're all ripped up and have a lot of stains on there. So it's kind of good to keep those. So I'm going to go back and get our recipe. Let's see, we're going to need a little bit of sugar as well. Okay. And our recipe calls for 3½ cups of sugar. Obviously, I don't have 3½ cups here. And then we're going to use 1/4 cup of Sure Gel. We're going to mix these two together in the powder state first, okay? And then we're going to add that to our peppers. So we've got our habaneros in there. We've got our red bell peppers. It says to add 1/4 cup of water. And when you have the correct amount of peppers, that works out well. As you can see, we already have this much liquid in here already, but it still asks that you add a little bit more water, okay? So we're going to just add a little bit here. Like I said, if this was the correct amount of pepper, we would measure 1/4 cup, but I just want to kind of get you to get the idea. Okay. It's also important to, let me see if I can get our spoon here, to use a metal spoon in this, and I'll tell you why later as we go along here, okay? And you also need a whisk, because the recipe is going to call for you to whisk in the Sure Gel and the sugar. If you don't constantly whisk in the beginning, you're going to end up with clumps, okay? So, and that wouldn't make a very good product, all right? And it also, you pour in the vinegar too at this point. And the recipe calls for 2 cups of distilled white vinegar, okay? So what we're going to do is bring that to a boil, and we're going to cook it down. If you use a stock pot similar to this, or one that's heavy duty, like a cast iron, so those are all, those come in really handy when you're making jelly, okay? We're going to boil that down, and let's see, okay, and once it starts boiling, so we're going to just whisk in that powder, all right, and it's going to start getting kind of something on the top, kind of a film. If you've ever done any kind of jam or jelly, they'll ask you to kind of skim the top at the very end, okay? Because if you don't skim off all that foam on the top, you could possibly have problems with your jar sealing. It's just not going to make as good of a product. It doesn't look as nice for sure, okay? And so once it gets boiling, you want to turn off the heat for a little while. You want all that water, extra water, to evaporate on the with the red peppers, okay? Because you don't want too watery of a product. So once that's evaporated, then you add the vinegar and the Sure Gel and the sugar, okay? And you let that boil for probably, it takes about 15 minutes or so. You're going to end up with a foam like this, okay? And then we're going to just scrape it off with our spoon. Try to get as much of it off as we can. Sometimes you can use, to see if the gel has set, you can take a spoon, a metal spoon, like this, okay? Stick it in the jelly, and then, let's see, let me go back a minute. Put your spoon in the freezer first, get it very cold, okay? Then you put it in the jelly, and then you can put your finger down through. If it leaves a permanent kind of path, then you know the gel is good, okay? And it's ready to go, right? If not, keep cooking it a little bit longer. Again, follow the directions on the Sure Gel packet and the recipe in your book, okay? All right, so you're waiting for that pectin to dissolve and the sugar, and once that has done that, you're going to see that gel start to work. It's going to get to be a little more clumpy, all right? All right. So after it's boiled for a minute, we're going to remove it from the heat, skim off the foam, okay? And then just set it aside. In the meantime, when that's just kind of setting aside, we want to get our jars processed. This is a hot water bath canner, right? Again, like we said in the beginning, you don't have to can your jelly. If you want to just eat it up in a few days, go ahead and stick it in the jar and stick it in the refrigerator. You're good to go. If we are hot water bath canning, I always like to make sure my jars are clean, either in the dishwasher, sterilize them a little bit, or boil them just for a couple of minutes. I usually fill up my water here in this pot, set the empty jars in there, and let them kind of sterilize that way. It's not as important to leave them for a long time, like if you were canning vegetables or things like that, but it's just good to know that they're clean. The lids, okay, and you've got the metal lid too. Whoops. Like here, okay? You want to make sure you're using a new lid every time, okay? Don't use the ones that you got off your jelly from last year. It's because of the gum. That's you want that to be new. You want that to make a good seal, okay? All right. And of course, you can take these metal lids off after they've processed. All right. Okay. So we're going to put our jelly in once it's ready to go in the jars. The jars are all clean. They're hot. Okay. We've added all the things that we needed to. This is a really good way to put your jelly in. It's kind of a no-mess way. All right, so we're going to fill up that jar. It's like 1/4 of an inch of headspace, which is another neat tool to use, okay? Once we get it in there, we're going to, I usually use a chopstick, which I can't see that right now. I'll use a chopstick and kind of get all those air bubbles out of there, all right? Then I put the lid on and put the screw top, okay, here. I just put it on kind of, once I have the lid, I just kind of put it on finger tight, okay, and it's ready to process, all right? If you're using these small jars, you can put quite a few in there, but you want to make sure the processing time is, as the recipe calls for, okay, which would be 10 minutes, all right? And you want to make sure the jars are all the same size, too, that you're processing, right, all right? Now, once you take those jars out with our jar lifter here, it's very important to kind of leave them sitting. I usually put a towel out. I leave them sitting on the towel. Don't even touch them. I mean, there might be water on the top too, but that's okay. Just leave that there. You will hear the pops sometimes immediately when you take them out, but it's good to leave them sitting out for like pretty much till the next day. So about 24 hours. If they haven't sealed by then, you want to put them in the refrigerator for sure. Okay, and then these jars of jelly will last up to 1.5 years now. They've extended the time. So I don't think it'll last that long because people want to eat all of them. Okay, so a good way to serve this kind of jelly, I think, and this is especially nice for Christmas time. Oh, I should take a little bit of cream cheese. A few crackers here. Another thing, I keep a little jelly to the side that I'm not canning and just put it in the container, keep it in the refrigerator. That way you can eat some and save the rest for gifts, right? Okay. So I'll just put a little bit of cream cheese on there, a little bit of red pepper jelly. It's beautiful color. This is kind of the consistency. It's a little softer. It's a little easier to spread. So you actually could pour it right on top of a cream cheese log if you wanted to. All right. Okay. So that is how you can come up with a very inexpensive but very nice homemade gift for your friends any time of the year. All right. So thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy making red pepper jelly.